I'm here to talk about the newly launched line of fragrances from Jil Sander. I know, yet another high-end, expensive line of fragrances from a designer brand, but this one I'm excited about, as Jil Sander is among my favorite brands at the moment, my other being Margiela under Galliano. Unfortunately, he has left that brand, and rumor has it the current designers at Jil Sander are leaving as well. But I was really excited. I thought if anyone can do this kind of thing right, it will be this brand. I've been a fan of Jil Sander for years and years, going back to when Jil Sander herself designed the brand. I can remember when I graduated college, going to the Jil Sander boutique in Chicago and buying myself a suit that still looks great and modern to this day. I love the minimalist aesthetic. I love the sharp, clean lines. I love a focus on materials and cut that Jil Sander, the brand, is known for. I also got excited about the brand again when Raf Simons designed for several seasons. He really did a stellar job. And then it kind of fell, not into obscurity, but I think had a rough time finding a voice post Raf Simons. And then does the design duo of Luke and Lucy Meyer, who are also a married couple, took over several years ago. I'm ballparking here, say it's been almost 10. Although in my mind, they're still the new designers at Jil Sander. How time flies. And I think they really kind of mined a new aesthetic that still made sense for the brand without feeling overly redundant or copying what Jill or Raf did. I feel like they brought their own take. If I could describe it as one thing, they do a very sort of column type silhouette, very loose, but draping really beautifully. And honestly, the more I get into fashion and buy fashion, I really think fabric is everything. You can find decently styled things at a good price, but the fabric will never be nice if you buy fast fashion. And so Jil Sander puts a lot of research into the fabrics and materials they use, and that's why I really love the brand. So anyway, on to the fragrances. It's interesting because they hadn't really done anything in a very long time, but apparently I remember hearing in a podcast that Jil Sander's son was like a huge fragrance in Germany. Like every German owned Jil Sander's son, and even to this day that it's still very popular. I have one of the older cheapy Jil Sander fragrances as well, which is kind of a nice freshy, comes in like a slanted bottle. But this is their entry into the high-end line. The brand is owned by Only the Brave, which is the same company that also owns Maison Margiela. They're known obviously for their kind of mid-tier replica series of fragrances, and Marni, which has also been relatively quiet. So I kind of thought maybe it's just their strategy not to go heavy into the high-end designer realm of fragrances. But here we go. And the second part of the story, which is really amazing, is yesterday was my birthday and I went to the Jil boutique to try out these fragrances, potentially buy something. And as I'm there sniffing at the counter, I sprayed each one on a strip, had it set out. I was kind of all by myself enjoying the fragrances. These two French ladies came up and they were kind of testing them, touching them, speaking in French. I know a bit of French, but I gotta be honest, not enough to completely understand what they were talking about. A few moments later, the ladies kind of look at me and one of them says, "May I introduce you to my friend? She made this perfume," and she points to Smoke. I was like, oh my gosh, it was the perfumer who did Smoke, whose name, I should have remembered this, is Bérénice Watteau, a very French name. That's so amazing. It was my birthday, so serendipitous. Of course, me being shy, I didn't know very much what to say. I just said, wow, that's amazing. I'm really into fragrance. But it's one of those things where it's like, how do you convey to someone that you're not just some casual user, you're deeply into fragrance and you're very happy to meet a nose. So that was crazy and amazing. I looked her up and it looks like she's only done a few fragrances. So maybe it's her first big launch and she was excited to go see the display in the store in New York. But that was just so cool that I got to meet the perfumer of the perfume as I was trying them out. So what I did buy is their travel size set. One thing I really appreciate is they've offered many sizes and versions and price points. The full bottle is $290, which isn't great, but at least it's not Guerlain or the new Bottega line prices of $400 or $500. They sell refill canisters for those as well. They have two options for travel size. They have one which comes in cute little bottles, which I believe are 8 ml. And then they have this, which is more like your standard kind of stick travel spray. 10 mil each for about $200. So not super cheap, which is why I wanted to spray them first. I didn't want to buy 10 mils of the whole line if I didn't really think they were that good. But as you can see, I bought them, so I did think they were that good. There's quite some interesting stuff in the release here. And I remember the perfumer who I met saying something like they're very innovative, very unique. She kept emphasizing that. And I wanted to ask how so, but I didn't know how to say that without sounding sarcastic, because I honestly didn't mean it sarcastically. I just wanted her to explain more about the innovation at work here. But the website says, a new fusion of botany and technology, 6 clear-cut compositions infused with 3 key natural ingredients, and the synthetic molecules of aldehydes, the specific quality of this collection. Sparks of light flashing through the fragrance, amplifying the key notes and the harmonics of the main ingredients, giving to every natural material the right exposure and new ways of expression. So it's really interesting to build a line around aldehydes, as that's not the most popular smell for non-frag heads. But I suppose the innovation here is what they're describing, that this aldehyde molecule helps amplify the natural materials. And part of the current Jil Sander aesthetic under the designers, the Meyers, is adding a little warmth to minimalism through craft. So they often will mix these, the very typical Jil Sander is like a lot of black wool gabardine and sharp, but not body hugging, kind of away from the body cuts, but adding like a crocheted detail, some hand painted looking type thing. But adding these elements, a lot of their ad campaigns, they have the Jil Sander Plus line, which is all about outdoor, kind of more functional apparel. All their ad campaigns mix nature. When they first opened their boutique, they had this big yellow flowering bush in the white cube. And I actually love this. This is so my aesthetic. Nature meets minimalism. Purely cold, simple minimalism can get a little boring unless the silhouette is just so. So I like that injection of nature and of craft into the designs, and I can see how they're trying to carry that through the line here. So I guess let's get into the fragrances. We're gonna go a little bit backwards because I still have yesterday's scent strips. So we're gonna start with the base, which I can smell, and then I will refresh. So starting with the freshest on the left is Leaf. It says, a cloud of greenness, fresh, unexpected, electrifying, the remembrance of a freshly picked black crim tomato, fruit and leaves in a Mediterranean garden. Thanks to the aldehydes, the combination of upcycled key lime, CO2 cardamom, and a breath of cormint from India has a citrus mandarin sparkle. This is by Julie Massé. I have to say, on the deep dry down, I feel like there's a little bit of like a ambroxany sweetness giving this longevity, not in a bad way. I just kind of recognize that designer-ish deep base here and a little bit of sweetness, but it is fresh and it's not over the top. I hate to guess ingredients because people always say you haven't actually smelled the real thing, you're not a perfumer, but I think you can say a jasmine smells like a jasmine, whether or not it's a jasmine, saying it smells like a jasmine, okay, as I grind my axe here, is still fair game. But it smells like ambroxan because I get that kind of Baccarat Rouge-y. I get like a smoky, warm sweetness from ambroxan, but in no means smelling like Baccarat Rouge. But that's kind of a little bit what I'm getting in the deep base. But this was one of my favorites from the opening, so I'll spray a fresh spray here. Oh gosh, I hit my thumb. Yeah, really nice minty, herbaceous. Oh, I like green fragrances. It's really fresh. Compared to something like a Menthe Fresh or a Geranium Pour Monsieur, it's even more minty on the nose. It's really like just sticking your nose right in like a glass of muddled mint. It's really hyper realistic mint, I think, actually. This one I really, really like. Like I said, I think it's not fair to judge first a fragrance by the way the strip smells one day later. I noticed there's one person, I have to admit that I had read these on Fragrantica who reviewed them all, and they compare this to Nomenclature's Shiso, and I can see that. I have smelled that fragrance actually as well. From memory, it's been a while. That one's a little more synthetic, a little less like on the nose, you're actually smelling a mint leaf than this one. But this one, really nice. If you like mint, if you like green fragrances, hyper realistic with that good longevity. I like that they admit, as most perfumes do, using some synthetic ingredients to extend out and give more life and presence to the naturals. But I think that blend here is actually, it's really well done. The synthetics don't overly stick out or dominate the fragrance to me in a bad way. So next up is miel, which means honey. Let's see what it says about that and who did it. Smell coffee miel. Mathilde Bijouet. I don't know this perfumer. It still smells like a sweet honey right now. This one, also very on the nose, honey, not overly, you can get those animalic or kind of, I find honey often a little bit cloying, but it's not too cloying to me. Let's see. So it says sharp molecules of the aldehydes, essence of upcycled cedarwood vetiver from Madagascar, CO2 extracted jasmine become bright and vertical, reaching radiant floral notes. The nuanced darkness of buckwheat honey, the fragrance's main olfactory inspiration, together with the flowers lurking beneath the surface and the accents of aldehydes. So the honey is still there and still legible. Let's see how it smells fresh. I've not sprayed all of these first, so some of these, it's the very first spray out of the canister. Yeah, I'm getting more citrus. Does it say citrus? Vetiver, jasmine. There's a fresh, like a juiciness to the intro that's nice. That could be, again, the aldehyde adding a little sparkle to all of these. Yeah, honestly, not a lot to say. I'm not a huge honey fan. I will say I like this more than other honey fragrances I have tried. But maybe there's not quite enough other things going on here to really differentiate, unless you find like that Hiram Green honey fragrance. If you find that too heavy and thick, or Guerlain tobacco honey, if you find that too heavy and thick or too sweet, this might be the kind of Goldilocks honey. It's got a nice freshness and a little bit of florals in the background. I think it is the aldehyde, because I'm picking up on sort of a champagne fizziness, adding some lift in the opening with honey. So not my favorite, but again, I think it's well done. So let's move on to black tea. This one I was actually very excited about because it's by Nathalie Lorson. Her creations were really put on my map by her work for Maison Violet. I think she did a lot of their fragrances, and those are fantastic, and it made me a fan of Nathalie Lorson. So black tea. This one's the lightest dry down, but what's left right now is a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of like resins to me. So let's do a fresh spritz and read the blurb. In this modern, ambery, spicy fragrance made of unexpected associations, the aldehydes highlight the warmth of osmanthus from China, upcycled cinnamon from Sri Lanka, and black tea, CO2 extracted to obtain a pitch as close as possible to its natural notes. So yeah, I would say it's not quite as deep and smoky as the blurb would have you believe, but it is, again, fairly realistic black tea fragrance. I am getting the cinnamon. There's a nice spice to it, but it doesn't go in like a chai spiced territory because it's not milky in any way. Yeah, I didn't notice the cinnamon in the store, but now I'm definitely getting it. It's really nice, sort of like a red hot cinnamon type thing with a tea accord underneath. A little bit of sweetness as well. Again, for me, I like the idea of a tea fragrance, but I have to say in wearing them, I often find them just a little bit lacking in something. But again, it's a nice realistic tea. The spice adds a nice twist to it, but it feels fairly delicate. Maybe it'd be a nice springtime, warm weather. But yeah, what's sticking out to me right now is the spice is really something nice that I haven't smelled in other tea fragrances. On we move to earth. I have to say this is maybe my favorite so far. So the dry down smells like a sort of cool patchouli. Let's spray it. as one might expect, named Earth. But what's cool about this one, let's find the blurb. I didn't anticipate this video would be so long, but I'm realizing now it's going to be, isn't it? Is a mushroom accord. This is by Julie Massé. The smell after the rain, small puddles of water, the first memory of a matsutake mushroom, the generosity of the earth. An inspiration made real by the meticulous combination of upcycled rose, Damascena absiflor up extract, rose centifolia, extracted patchouli leaves with the aldehydes turning everything into a hyper-detailed image. So I suppose it's coming into vision now what the innovation of this collection is. Aldehydes used as like a focusing lens to the fragrance. This kept reminding me of something and I liked it a lot, and I kept thinking, where have I smelled this before? And I'm wearing this afternoon as my scent of the day, and it came to me and I realized I left it in the other room, but I'm gonna get it now. Does anybody remember CB I Hate Perfume Wild Hunt? Look at this ancient bottle. This smells like forest floor, greenery, wet leaves, wet earth. He's known, well, I think he founded Demeter Fragrance, or at least he was the director for a while. Then he went off, created his own brand, which had quite a lot of hype. He had a Brooklyn boutique, which is where I got this. Later, I heard that he moved. I just Googled one day and his shop showed like down the street from me. So that gives you a clue where I actually live. But I don't know if that shop is still there. I don't know what he's up to. Christopher Brosius. He had other things like burning leaves, very realistic, natural smells. It was called I Hate Perfume because I think he hated perfumey smells. So many of his smells are very realistic, including, I remember he had a roast beef fragrance. But Wild Hunt was my favorite and the only one I own. And I don't think they necessarily copied it. I think it could just be two minds con to the same idea. Who knows? Maybe they had smelled Wild Hunt, but I somewhat doubt it. But it really reminds me of that. I have to say Wild Hunt and a lot of the CB I Hate perfumes a little bit fall apart in the base for me. They don't have that pleasurable of a wear, but they have really beautiful, realistic openings, very evocative of what they're intended to represent. Some better than others. It could be a function of the fact that they're all water perfumes. I'm not sure how much that affects the base materials, or just his general avoidance of perfumey ingredients means that they kind of die a flat death after an hour or two. But anyway, that's to say, in some ways, this Jill Sander is better constructed. It lasts longer. It really keeps that wet mushroom earthiness to the deep dry down where you get more patchouli. I've said this, I feel like frequently recently, that's my favorite kind of style of patchouli, when it's sort of a camphorous, wet, earthy note. But to me, this is very different from all the other patchoulis that I have. And that I guess it's a little bit more leafy, a little bit more greeny, more like the dry, wet forest leaves and not just the earth. But that's my favorite because it's quite unique among other fragrances out today, even though it smells a lot like CB I Hate Perfume's Wild Hunt. So on two more to go. Coffea is obviously the coffee fragrance. This one does smell like another fragrance that's on the market but discontinued. Can you take a guess? It's by Paul Guerlain, and he bears the name of the company who does a fragrance that's a little bit like this. So it's Iris and Coffee. It does remind me a bit of Guerlain's Iris Tourfier or of like a Dior Homme Intense. It's that similar kind of iris note, semi-sweet, a little bit waxy, a little bit of coffee. I like that note and I like that scent profile, so I do actually really like this. And I would consider purchasing this because Iris Tourfier is discontinued and is more expensive. And I would say I like this equally well. I haven't sprayed them side by side to really pick out what the differences are. But this one, if you've smelled your Dior Homme Intense, if you've smelled other, semi-sweet, I don't want to say sweet, but it's not like a dry, powdery Chanel iris at all. This will smell familiar to you. But it is very well done. Let's see what Paul Guerlain press release says, a floral ambery fragrance with the vibrant, dazzling facets provided by the aldehydes across the CO2 extracted coffee beans, upcycled orris, and Peru balsam from El Salvador, producing a clash and a synthesis of two worlds. Outside it is white and silent, inside in timbered full room of people. The morning sunlight and the smell of ground coffee after the brew. I'll say the coffee smell doesn't hit you over the head as like overly realistic, but it is there. I would say maybe even more discernible than in Iris torrefied, which that one actually the name does not mean coffee. It means like roasted, as if maybe the iris is roasted, but I believe it does have a coffee note listed. So not a whole lot else to say other than that, except it is very beautiful. If you do like iris, I like it quite a lot. Very good longevity. This one I sprayed on my wrist when I was at the store and I was smelling it throughout the day. I think at their prices, it is a viable alternative that's cheaper than the Guerlain if you missed out on that. Although more expensive, of course, than Dior Homme Intense. But I'd say it has a little more body. From memory, Dior Homme Intense, the iris doesn't stick around all that long. A lot of the Dior Homme line, I find the iris more of like a puff at the beginning, the opening notes. I think Dior Homme Intense, maybe it lasts the longest out of the line. But here I remember finding that sweet iris coffee mixture lasting pretty far into the base. And lastly, smoke created by the lady whom I serendipitously met, Berenice Watteau. That's a fun name to say. And hello, Berenice, if you happen upon this video. She asked me my favorite, and I had just smelled them a little bit. And embarrassingly, I told the truth, and I said leaf and coffea were my favorites. Smoke, I'm very interested in reading it, but I feel like I hadn't quite wrapped my head around it at that moment. Because it's not particularly smoky to me. But it says the depth of the woody, decidedly smoky, spicy notes of upcycled cedarwood, Cade from Spain. Elemi is cut by the clean vertical strokes of aldehydes. An interplay of shadows and light, heat and coldness, refined by fresh laundry notes and traversed by oud facets. The smell of clothes drying near a fireplace. Now that is an evocative image. And I'm not just saying this to make Berenice happy if she sees this, but after reading that and smelling this more in isolation, it's really beautiful because it is this contrast. I think I was confused at the store because I was like, this is quite fresh smelling. Where is the smoke? But I do get sort of a fresh laundry soapy musk cut with a woody, not overtly smoky, but more kind of woody, cedary, resinous scent, which is a combination I don't think I've smelled before. And it's actually quite nice. It's funny, I had this thought. I was like, I should repent and tell her that smoke is my favorite. But honestly, re-smelling it, I think it might be the most interesting in the line because it has that combination. I think just don't go in expecting incense and smoke. Yeah, of course, if you hate sort of laundry musks, you might not like this. But it's not all about that. It's not just a boring, clean laundry musk fragrance. Yeah, I think that's why at the time when she asked me, I just didn't know what to make of it. And I still find it interesting, but that's a good thing. I'm confused by like, what am I smelling here? It's fresh. I feel like I smell bergamot, a bergamot kind of freshness, even though it's not listed, but maybe again, it's the aldehyde lending this kind of fresh zinginess that can read as citrus. But yeah, it's like clean smoke. That is interesting, actually. Now, I think that image is actually perfect. Clothes drying near a fireplace. So yeah, freshly laundered clothes that have just the tiniest wisp of smokiness from far off in the distance. So that's the whole line. I realize I've probably taken a very long time now at this point. I think they're worth checking out. Pros and cons. If I had to say something bad about them, they were all long lasting, so I don't think longevity is an issue, but maybe just a tad thin. And this might be an intentional aesthetic choice. I can't imagine a Jill Sander fragrance being like an amouage that's really opulent and like chock full of notes and contrasts. But for the price point, you might expect something a little more complex and a little richer. Positives, they don't smell like some of the other high-end designer lines, which kind of smell just like juiced up designers. They're nicer than that. They're more natural smelling than that, since all these themes are kind of things that occur in nature: leaf, honey, tea, earth. You know what I mean. But again, if you don't like overly simple fragrances, you may wish for a little bit more going on in these, and maybe not find them all that mind-blowing of fragrances, especially if you have smelled things like CB I Hate Perfume, which also does very on-the-nose, natural-smelling fragrances. But overall, I like them. I would even say I like them a lot. Me having so many fragrances, I think I will be good with this set of travel size for quite some time. If I was to buy a bottle, initially I was going to say actually leaf, even though I feel like you can find that scent profile elsewhere for cheaper. I just really like how fresh and zingy that mint is. But honestly, smoke is really growing on me, and I'll have to wear it on skin. Smoke, leaf, and earth would be my favorite so far, but I like them all enough to wear and to get use out of this entire sample set. So that's my long review. I thought this would be short because I only just got these, and I thought I wouldn't have very much to say about them yet. I'll report back once I have time to wear them all on skin and see if anything changes. And that's all for now.